The Nazi time machine. Hitler's prehistoric park. What if I told you that the Nazis didn't just want to conquer Europe? They wanted to bring back extinct animals from 9,000 years ago. What if I told you they actually tried it? And what if I told you that thousands of innocent people died for this mad scientific fantasy? You're about to discover one of the most bizarre and terrifying experiments in human history. A story so outrageous, so twisted, that it sounds like science fiction, but every word is true. Picture this. It's 1941. Deep in a remote Polish forest, SS officers are burning villages to the ground. Families are being dragged from their homes. Children are screaming. But this isn't just another Nazi atrocity. This is something far stranger. They're clearing this ancient woodland for a very specific purpose. They want to fill it with prehistoric monsters. Now, before you think I've lost my mind, let me take you back to where this madness began. Because, to understand this story, we need to meet two brothers who thought they could play God with evolution itself. The year is 1928. 5 years before Hitler even comes to power. In the grand halls of Berlin Zoo, a man named Lutz Heck is having the most dangerous idea of his career. He's standing there, looking at ordinary farm cattle, and he's thinking about legends, ancient Germanic myths about massive wild bulls that could kill a man with one charge. These weren't just stories to Lutz. These were memories, genetic memories locked away inside every cow, every bull, every domestic animal on Earth. And Lutz Heck believed he could unlock them. You see, Lutz wasn't just any zoologist. He came from zoo royalty. His father had run Berlin Zoo for decades. Lutz himself was director of one of Germany's most prestigious zoos. But more importantly, he was a dreamer, a romantic, the kind of man who read Germanic legends as a child and never quite grew out of them. The legend that captivated him most was the story of the Aurochs, the mighty wild ox that had terrorized Central Europe for thousands of years. Julius Caesar himself had written about them, describing beasts not much smaller than an elephant, extraordinary in size and strength, sparing neither man nor wild beast. But here's the thing. The last aurochs had died in 1627, gone forever, extinct, lost to history. Or so everyone thought. Let's had a theory. What if extinction wasn't permanent? What if you could reverse it? What if all those domestic cattle grazing peacefully in German fields still carried the genetic blueprint of their savage ancestors deep in their DNA? It was a mad idea, completely unscientific by today's standards. But in 1928, genetics was still in its infancy. People believed in something called backbreeding. The idea that you could somehow breed backwards through time, peeling away thousands of years of domestication like layers of paint on an old wall. So Lutz and his brother Heinz decided to try the impossible. They would recreate the Aurochs. They would bring back the dead. They started small, traveling across Europe, collecting different breeds of cattle. From the wild hills of Corsica, they brought back massive bulls with curved horns. From the Camargue in southern France, they found muscular, aggressive cattle that still retained some wildness. From Spain, they acquired fighting bulls known for their ferocity. Each breed carried different traits. Some had the right horn shape. Others had the proper coloring. Some were larger, others more aggressive. The brothers' plan was simple in theory, nightmarish in practice. They would breed these animals together, generation after generation, selecting only the offspring that most resembled their prehistoric ancestors. It was like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle where most of the pieces were missing, and you weren't even sure what the final picture was supposed to look like. But Lutz was obsessed. He wrote in his journal, "In my youth, My imagination was caught above all by two huge wild oxen, which had become legendary and regarded as the most powerful representatives of primeval Germanic game. Notice that word, Germanic. Because even in 1928, even before the Nazis came to power, this wasn't just about science. This was about identity, about proving that the Germanic peoples had once been mighty hunters, brave enough to face down monsters in ancient forests. The brothers worked for years, breeding, selecting, culling. Any animal that didn't meet their standards was eliminated from the program. Only the strongest, most aggressive, most perfect specimens were allowed to reproduce. Sound familiar? It should, because this exact same logic would soon be applied to human beings. In 1933, everything changed. Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist Party seized power in Germany. And suddenly, Lutz's hex-crazy breeding experiment wasn't just tolerated. It was celebrated. You see, the Nazis had their own obsession with the ancient Germanic past. They believed that thousands of years ago, their Aryan ancestors had been pure, noble, powerful. They'd lived in sacred forests, hunting mighty beasts, forging their racial identity in the wilderness. These weren't just stories to the Nazis. They were scientific fact. They pointed to the Roman historian Tacitus, who had written about the Germanic tribes. All have fierce blue eyes, copper-colored hair, and huge frames. They appear as a distinct, unmixed race, like no one but themselves. The great forests of Germania weren't just geographical features. They were spiritual homelands, sacred spaces, where the master race had been born. And now, modern Germans had a chance to return to their roots, to recreate those ancient hunting grounds, to fill them with the same beasts their ancestors had faced. But there was one problem. Those primeval forests were gone, cleared centuries ago for farmland and cities. The great wilderness of ancient Germania existed now only in myths and legends, except for one place. Deep in eastern Poland lay a forest that time forgot, the primeval forest of Bia, nearly 1,500 square kilometers of untouched woodland, home to wolfslings, European bison, and countless other rare species. To the Nazis, this wasn't just a forest, it was a revelation. Here was their ancestral homeland, preserved almost exactly as it had been thousands of years ago. Here was where they could recreate the Germanic paradise. And the man who would make it happen was Hermann Göring. If Hitler was the face of Nazi Germany, Göring was its appetite. Massively obese, addicted to morphine, obsessed with luxury and power. He was Hitler's deputy, commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe, and most importantly for our story, Reich master of the hunt. Göring fancied himself a great hunter, a modern Germanic knight. He'd actually visited Bioyega before the war. As a guest of the Polish government, he'd shot game in its ancient depths and fallen in love with its wild beauty. But this wasn't just about hunting for sport. This was about ideology, about creating a living museum of Aryan supremacy. There's a remarkable photograph from 1937, 2 years before the war began. It shows Hermann Göring and Lutz Heck standing over a detailed model of the Bioyega forest. They're studying it like generals planning a military campaign, which, in a sense, they were, because in front of them, gleaming on the table, is a golden oryx horn. A symbol, a promise, a threat. By this time, Lutz's breeding program was well advanced. After nearly a decade of work, his cattle were starting to look like their ancient ancestors. Larger than domestic cows, more muscular, with the distinctive curved horns and coloring described in medieval texts. But they had one crucial flaw. They were still dependent on humans, still domesticated at heart. For them to be worthy of Nazi hunters, they needed to be truly wild, truly dangerous. So in autumn 1938, Heck loaded his precious beasts onto railway cars and transported them 800 kilometers from Berlin to Göring's hunting estate in eastern Germany. It was time to see if his 10-year experiment had worked. The results were... dramatic? Heck was ecstatic, he wrote. The energy of our first wild cattle in the German forest, and their innate beauty and strength, aroused such enthusiasm that they were very soon left free to roam the moors. But local people told a different story. These weren't noble wild animals. They were monsters. Unpredictable, violent. They attacked anyone who ventured into their territory. They destroyed bicycles. They disrupted the feeding patterns of native deer. Göring was furious. This wasn't the romantic hunting challenge he'd envisioned. These animals were dangerous in all the wrong ways. They weren't prehistoric nobles. They were thugs. But Heck's failure would soon become irrelevant, because on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. The great experiment was about to begin in earnest, and thousands of innocent people were about to pay the price. Initially, the Nazis couldn't get their hands on Bioega. Under the secret Maleta-Ribbentrop Pact, eastern Poland went to the Soviet Union. Stalin's soldiers were now guarding the forests that Göring coveted, but the war gave Lutz Heck new opportunities. As German armies conquered Europe, he followed behind them like a ghoulish collector, looting animals from captured zoos to strengthen his breeding programs. In Warsaw, he arrived at the zoo just days after the city's fall. The director, Jan Kubicki, and his wife Antonina were forced to watch helplessly as Heck selected their finest specimens for transport back to Germany. The zoo will be liquidated, Heck announced coldly. Important animals will be sent to German zoos. The rest will be killed. What Heck didn't know was that beneath his feet, in the zoo's basement, Jewish families were hiding from the Nazi dragnet. The Kubickis had turned their zoo into a secret refuge for human beings. Even as Heck was stealing their animals for his mad experiments, Antonina later wrote about that terrifying visit, how she would play piano to warn the hidden refugees when danger was near. A coded melody that meant, stay quiet, stay hidden, stay alive. While Heck was pillaging European zoos, Göring was planning something far more ambitious. He wasn't just going to steal animals. He was going to steal an entire ecosystem. The man he chose to help him was one of history's most sinister figures. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, architect of the Holocaust. Himmler shared Göring's obsession with Germanic mythology. He too believed that Eastern Europe should be cleared of its degenerate inhabitants and repopulated with pure-blooded Germans. What better way to begin this ethnic cleansing than with a nature conservation project? It was the perfect cover story. They weren't committing genocide. They were creating a wildlife sanctuary. On June 22, 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Within days, German armies had overrun vast swaths of territory, including the coveted Bioega forest. Now Göring's plan could finally be implemented. The forest would be annexed directly into the German Reich. It would become the crown jewel of a vast wilderness stretching across northern Poland, a recreated Germania where Aryan supermen could hunt prehistoric beasts. But first, it had to be ethnically cleansed. The man chosen to lead this operation was SS Oberführer, one of Göring's favorite hunting companions. Der Wange was a sadist and a criminal, the perfect choice for what was about to unfold. In July 1941, Police Battalion 322 began systematically clearing the forest of its human inhabitants. Their war diary, which survives today, provides a chilling record of what happened next. Our orders are to clear the forest of all inhabitants. Execute all undesirables. Between July 25th and August 1st alone, they burned 34 villages to the ground. Over 7,000 people were deported. Those who resisted were shot on the spot. The village of Budga was typical. On July 25th, Battalion 322 arrived at dawn. By evening, 183 families had been expelled. Nearly 1,000 people gone. Their homes reduced to ash and rubble. One survivor later described the scene. This photo is taken in July 1941 when they were burning the houses. What you see, it's fled completely. Like in the picture, it's a very, very big opening. For the SS, this wasn't just military necessity. It was racial hygiene. The forest was being purified, cleansed of inferior peoples to make room for German settlers and German wildlife. The Jewish communities that had lived in these woods for centuries were the first to be eliminated entirely. Within weeks, villages that had existed since the 18th century were wiped from the map. Their synagogues burned, their cemeteries desecrated, their people murdered or deported to extermination camps. The forest was becoming Judenfrei, free of Jews. One of the first territories to achieve this horrific Nazi goal. And in the midst of this slaughter, Dr. Lutz Heck arrived with his cattle. He was oblivious to the horror surrounding him, or perhaps he simply didn't care. In his memoirs, he wrote cheerfully about his fine, healthy stock of aurochs, and how every year now, the cows bring new calves into the world. He had other animals too. Bears, bison imported from North America, wild horses for his parallel project to recreate the tarpan, the extinct European wild horse. Bia Owi. I was becoming Heck's laboratory, a testing ground for his theories about genetic resurrection. But the forest had other inhabitants now. Partisans, resistance fighters who used the dense woodland as cover for guerrilla attacks against the German occupiers. The SS's response was predictable. They launched hunting expeditions into the forest. Patrols that sought human prey with the same ruthless efficiency they might use to track wild animals. The war diary of these units makes for horrific reading. On March 30th, 1943, Corporal Rudolf Trebes described leading a patrol that spotted a group of partisans around a campfire. They crept within 60 meters, then attacked. 5 partisans were killed, including a woman. But the SS didn't just kill resistance fighters. They hunted down any Jews who had escaped the initial deportations, leaving their bodies where they fell as a warning to others. The diary entries are chillingly matter of fact. 139 Jews killed on wild hunting missions. The SS literally kept score, recording the names of individual victims as if they were game animals. After each killing spree, the German soldiers were given free beer rations for what their commanders called cozy Getagethers, alcohol to wash away the taste of murder. Group bonding through shared violence. This was the reality of the Nazi Nature Reserve, a place where extinct animals were being resurrected while living human beings were systematically exterminated. The same ideology drove both projects, the belief that some lives were more valuable than others, that genetic purity justified any atrocity, that the strong had not just the right but the duty to eliminate the weak. It was social Darwinism taken to its logical, horrifying conclusion. As the war progressed, it became clear that the partisans were winning. The dense forest provided perfect cover for guerrilla warfare. Despite 3 years of brutal repression, The Germans never gained full control of Baywang. And outside the forest, the tide of war was turning against the Reich. Soviet armies were pushing the Germans back towards Berlin. The Nazi map of Eastern Europe was crumbling. By 1944, most of Berlin lay in ruins, including Heck's breeding facilities at the zoo. His precious genetic experiments were destroyed by Allied bombing. The animals he'd worked so hard to create simply vanished. Some say they were eaten by hungry Berliners and Russian soldiers. Others believe they escaped into the countryside and died out naturally. As for the Aurochs and Bioyega, their fate remains a mystery. Some locals claim they survived the war and roamed the forest for years afterwards. Others believe the partisans or Soviet forces killed them as symbols of Nazi occupation. In May 1945, Hermann Göring was captured by American forces. Rather than face trial for his war crimes, he committed suicide by swallowing a cyanide capsule hidden in his cell. The full truth about the massacres in Bioyega didn't emerge until decades later. After the war, Lutz Heck was investigated as a Nazi official, but cleared of war crimes. He was classified as merely a follower rather than a leader. He continued his career as a zoologist until his death in 1983. But his legacy lives on. Today, descendants of Heck's cattle still exist. They're kept in zoos and nature parks across Europe, living reminders of one of history's strangest experiments. They're impressive animals, large, muscular, with a distinctive coloring and horn shape that Heck was trying to achieve. They do look remarkably like medieval descriptions of the Aurochs. But here's the scientific truth that Heck never wanted to acknowledge. They're no closer to the original Aurochs than any other domestic cattle. You can change the packaging, but you can't change what's inside the box. Modern DNA analysis has proved what scientists suspected all along. The Heck brothers project was fundamentally flawed. You cannot breed backwards through evolutionary time. You cannot resurrect extinct species through selective breeding of their descendants. The real Aurochs is gone forever. What Heck created were theatrical props. Animals that looked the part but had no authentic connection to their prehistoric ancestors. Some people call them Hitler's cows because of their Nazi origins. Others prefer the more neutral term, Heck cattle. But whatever you call them, they remain products of a twisted ideology that valued genetic purity above human life. The Bioyega forest itself still exists, now split between Poland and Belarus. It's still home to European bison, wolves, and countless other species. It's still one of Europe's last great wildernesses. But it's also a memorial, a reminder of what happens when science becomes contaminated by politics, when romantic mythology replaces rational thought, when the pursuit of genetic perfection becomes more important than basic human decency. The villages burned by Battalion 322 were never rebuilt. The Jewish communities murdered in those dark woods never returned. The forest keeps their secrets now, growing over the mass graves and burned foundations like green scar tissue. And somewhere in the depths of those ancient trees, if you know where to look, you can still find the concrete bunkers and observation posts built by Heck's SS protectors, crumbling monuments to humanity's darkest impulses. The Nazi dream of resurrecting the past turned into a nightmare of unprecedented horror. They wanted to bring back extinct animals, but instead they nearly drove the human species to extinction through their own moral blindness. It's a lesson we can never afford to forget, because the impulse to play God with genetics didn't die with the Third Reich. It just went underground, waiting for the next generation of dreamers and fanatics to discover its terrible power. Today, real scientists are working on genuine de-extinction projects. Using DNA extracted from mammoth bones, They hope to clone woolly mammoths within our lifetimes. Other teams are working on passenger pigeons, thylacines, and yes, even the technology exists now. That didn't exist in Hex time. Real genetic resurrection may actually be possible. But before we bring back the dead, we need to ask ourselves the questions that Lutz Heck never bothered to consider. Who decides which species deserve resurrection? What happens to existing ecosystems when we introduce prehistoric animals? And most importantly, what kind of world are we creating for the generations that come after us? Because the story of the Nazi Aurochs isn't really about cattle at all. It's about the danger of letting ideology trump science, of pursuing perfection at any cost, of forgetting that every action has consequences and some mistakes can never be undone. The forest remembers, and so must we. Now, you might think that's where this incredible story ends. With Hitler dead, Göring in his grave, and Hex cattle scattered to the winds, you might think that sanity finally prevailed over madness. But you'd be wrong, because the real horror of this story isn't just what the Nazis did in those dark Polish woods. It's how their twisted ideas about genetics and racial purity didn't die with them. Instead, they evolved, adapted, found new hosts in new generations of believers. And in the second part of our story, we'll discover how the Nazi obsession with genetic perfection spread far beyond Germany's borders, influencing everything from conservation biology to modern animal rights movements. We'll meet the scientists who are still using Hex techniques today. We'll visit the secret facilities where new genetic experiments are taking place. And we uncover the shocking truth about how Nazi ideology continues to shape our relationship with the natural world. Because this story isn't history, it's happening right now. And the consequences are more terrifying than anything Lutz Heck ever imagined. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!